I'm happy to welcome today's keynote speaker, Cindy Crane, who is President and CEO of Rocky Mountain Power, who will tell us a little bit about the company's wind energy plans for the state. Cindy is responsible for the business and operations of Rocky Mountain Power in Idaho, Utah, and Wyoming, just a little job. She serves on a number of boards, but I'll point out one of particular note, and that is she devotes time to the Energy Resources Council Board here at UW, for which we are appreciative. She's just the right person to tell us about Rocky Mountain Power's engagement with wind, so thank you for taking the time to join us. Please help me welcome Cindy.
Well, good afternoon, Nicole, Rob. Really appreciate the opportunity today. I can say that the conversation that you're having here just thus far has been terrific, and I think it's spot on, and I think it's a great time in Wyoming for us to be having this conversation. So I really appreciate the opportunity to come and talk with you today about our Energy Vision 2020. I feel a little bit like I resemble most of the comments that we've been having up here, as we've gone through the morning. So I want to start out by talking about PacifiCorp from a broader standpoint. So Rocky Mountain Power is a division of PacifiCorp. PacifiCorp serves customers in 6 western states. Under our Pacific Power Division, they serve Washington State, Oregon, and Northern California. And under the Rocky Mountain Power Division, we serve the customers in Wyoming, Utah, and southeastern Idaho. I think what's unique about PacifiCorp is we do serve a little over 1.9 million customers across the system that we have. But what's unique is our transmission system. We have one of the largest transmission systems in the West by way of line miles, over 16,000 miles of transmission. And that uniquely positions us to be able to use our diverse generating portfolio to serve our customers' loads, but it also enables us access into all the power markets here in the Western U.S. And as was mentioned earlier, certainly the energy imbalance market is the newest real-time market that we are very proud to have helped create, and that is really a tremendous success story. Bringing efficiency into the marketplace is what energy imbalance market development was all about, and it's doing it in the 5 and 15-minute real time. But at PacifiCorp, you can take a commitment from us that our leadership on bringing more efficiency into the marketplace here in the Western U.S. is not going to stop there. We will continue to look to lead the evolution of the energy imbalance market to bring more efficiency. We're just going to end up getting there differently than maybe MISO got there, or PJM, or the others. But we will get ourselves into more efficient markets. Of those 33 balancing authorities that were referenced earlier by Rob, 2 of those are ours. And it is the balancing authorities that create a balkanized system here in the West. So by getting the energy imbalance market, we're getting rid of that, one of those inefficiencies, and we just need to grow that. You can see on the slide there, we have just under 11,000 megawatts generating capacity that we own and operate, and you can see the diversity of those resources, certainly with our large coal fleet, a significant amount of that here in the state of Wyoming, but also recent additions over the last 10 years, we've added some gas generation, but we've also added a significant amount of renewable generation, with the bulk of that being our wind plants here in Wyoming. And so on some of the earlier slides that you saw that others presented up here, we were a heavy contributor to the development in Wyoming for the wind generation from 2006 to 2010. And we are very much positioned and looking forward to being an enabler as well as a large contributor to helping to move Wyoming's wind development to that next level going forward here. and which is what I want to talk about, what we announced back in April. So we announced Energy Vision 2020 back on April 4th. And so what exactly is that? Well, that is a commitment to invest or cause to have invested up to $3.5 billion in wind energy and transmission. And it's really comprised of 3 components, but mostly I'd say it's 2 components because 2 of them are inextricably linked and the other one is separate. So the first one really is taking our current wind generation fleet, where the majority of that is right here in Wyoming, just under 700 megawatts of our fleet is here in Wyoming. And it is about repowering the existing operating fleet that we have today. So we began building that in 2006 and completed our last project in 2010. And so as those projects are coming off the production tax credit first 10-year window, we will focus on repowering them. And that will be a tremendous amount of investment that will be made just to do that. The second component of our Energy Vision 2020 program really is transmission expansion, which will become an efficiency enabler, but it will also be an economic development enabler here in the state. So we've proposed to build one segment of our broader Gateway West transmission program. It's a 140-mile segment that essentially will enable us to decongest the grid in the eastern part of Wyoming, where we currently have transmission congestion, which you heard a lot about from the developers that were up here on the panel. So that will help us decongest, but it will also enable added transfer capacity that will facilitate upwards of 1,200 to 1,300 megawatts of additional new wind generation that can come onto the system. When we initially announced Energy Vision 2020, the numbers that you see on there are 1,100 megawatts. But as we're looking at the growing technology efficiencies that the other speakers talked about, with where the generator technology and the blades and those are going, we're actually finding the ability to get more out of the same investment levels that we have here. So tremendous investment. The majority of all of that investment is expected to occur here in Wyoming. Some of the repowering will actually be in Washington and Oregon, where the smaller amount of our wind fleet exists. So where are we at in the process? Well, on June 30th, Rocky Mountain Power made regulatory filings with each of our public utility commissions in our 3 states. So here in Wyoming, in Utah, and in Idaho. And we are now moving forward in that process, and we are conducting technical workshops so folks can continue to understand the details behind the proposals and be able to weigh in on those as we go through the regulatory process. From an economic development standpoint, these investments are projected to bring a large volume of construction jobs, which you also heard a very similar trend with all the developers that were up here earlier. So we're projecting these will facilitate between 1,100 and 1,600 construction jobs just here in Wyoming. And we're estimating that approximately $120 million in tax revenue through the construction window, and then another 11 to 14 million annually through tax revenue post-construction as it goes through. So you might ask yourself, what's really driving the timing? Why Energy Vision 2020? And it really is because we're looking at taking advantage of the federal production tax credit that is available. And whichever side of that coin you're on, whether you think there should be tax incentives or whether you don't, I think what we're looking at is they're out there, and we're going to take advantage of those for our customers and for our customers' rates. And that's really what's driving. This is a very unique, it's very time-sensitive opportunity, And we want to make sure that we capture that for our customers. One of the things, this came about in our integrated resource planning cycle where we do a 20-year look at loads and resources and look at how we're going to manage over 20 years. And historically, in that planning process, it's really been about looking at what and when those next resources are that you're going to need to meet that demand. And I would say today, it's a little bit different because what's driving Energy Vision 2020 is not load growth. It's pure economics. And you heard about how the technology and the levelized cost of energy and how that has come down over time. This is about an opportunity to invest and bring zero-cost fuel from an ongoing standpoint onto our system to serve our customers, and to do it because it's the most economic thing that we can do. And so that's truly what's driving that. We had this opportunity because we took the time to really seriously look at the production tax credit. And we preserved this opportunity by making significant investments literally the week of Christmas last year. And by doing that, even before we had the projects well-defined to understand the magnitude of them, the benefit of them, we knew that if we preserved that opportunity, we had a good chance of doing something great for the state of Wyoming and great for our customers across all of our service territory. Because when we made that significant investment, what that enabled us to do is capture 100% production tax credit for the life of these investments, provided we bring them online no later than December 31st, 2020. So it's a different world, and we're having to think differently and you get more creative. And frankly, it's quite exciting. It's exciting for us and our company and our employees, but it's exciting for our states, and it's exciting for our customers as well. So what are we really doing? So let's talk about the repowering aspect. Some things have already been covered from an overall technology standpoint, but if you look at the picture that's on this slide, really what you see is just go to the top of that tower and you have what's called the nacelle. That's essentially where the generator's at and all the technology. Then you've obviously got the hub and the blades. So what we're going to do is we are going to take the nacelle, the hub and blades off our existing towers and foundations, and we're going to replace them with the most modern technology that's available. And we continue to work with each of our providers on how far in the technology development that they are, that we can take advantage and leverage in this process. And I think what's really great about this one is this is really about taking an investment that we made several years ago and taking assets and getting more out of those assets and those investments and capturing those benefits for our customers. And so this one really excites us. And it's not just capturing benefits by way of financial benefit, but the environmental benefits that this captures as well. So when we look at the environmental footprint, there is little disturbance of any kind that will occur when we do the repowering, because we will not be putting new foundations, new roads, new infrastructure in place. It will be using everything that's in place today and simply putting new toppers on it. And so very, very exciting for us. So what does that mean here in Wyoming? I'll rattle off a few of the projects. You may know them by name or location. Our Glenrock projects, which is located on our former Glenrock Coal Company, Dave Johnston mine that we reclaimed, plus the Rolling Hills project. All three of those projects are on that property. They will all be repowered, with the exception of a few of them that were placed specifically on reclaimed land. You know, we we looked at that and can't meet the thresholds in order to repower a handful of them. But then we also have the 7 Mile Hill projects. We've got 2 projects on that property. Our High Plains project, our McFadden Ridge project, and our most recent project, our last one that was built, is our Dunlap project. We will facilitate some repowering in Washington and Oregon, as I mentioned. So I want to talk a little bit about the codependency of the new wind and transmission, because these two go hand in glove together. You heard from the developers that were up here about the debacle with transmission and the constraints. And so the new transmission can't be defended economically standalone on itself, but the wind can't be defended economically without transmission, because we can't get it hooked to the grid and we can't get it to the market. So in order to do this, these have to go in together, and the economics of what it's truly costing to do it has to be looked at collectively. And I really appreciate the question that one of the ladies over here had earlier on the transmission side, because I think you hit the nail right on the head, which is who pays. Because that is the constant challenge with transmission, large-scale transmission, and that assumes you've gotten it over the long-term permitting hurdles that it takes to get high-voltage transmission through as well. But so these are all going together. This combination is $2.5 billion of the $3.5 billion in investment that we've announced to move forward. So when we look at the transmission projects, and I'm not going to get technical on you because I'm the last person that can get technical on these matters, but there are a lot of components that make up what we're calling the transmission component of this project, with the largest one really being the 140-mile 500 kV transmission voltage segment, which was part of our Gateway West. There's obviously some voltage control that goes in there and some substation investments and things that go in there as well. But in addition to that, and I'll throw up a map here in a second so that you have a pretty good visual of what we're talking about, but there will also be some 230 kV system upgrades, as well as some new line build that will be encompassed in this. So when you wrap it all together, we really do look at this as a complete package that helps bring the voltage support, helps bring the reliability on the system, as well as the full transfer capacity that we'll be adding there. So if you look at and I know this is an eye test, so my sincere apologies. In fact, I would say, I'd refer you to, I know our team is here from Rocky Mountain Power. We have a large team here, and from Pacific Corp as well. And you should have on your tables some handouts that they've gone around and put on your tables. And quite honestly, that is going to be a lot easier eye test on the transmission than the one we have up on the system. But just visualize the Shirley Basin and Glen Rock areas, and coming out of there and going all the way over to the Bridger area, the Jim Bridger plant area in the Rock Springs area. That's essentially what we're talking about by way of all the transmission investment that's part of our Energy Vision 2020. You can also see, especially on the handout, and it correlates back where the existing wind facilities are, you can see that that is the same area in the state where the majority of all of the existing wind fleet resides as well. So let's talk about the wind projects for a little bit here. So the capacity that the investments in transmission are going to facilitate will support the increased capacity that we'll get out of repowering, but it will also enable additional new wind generation to come on board, and it will also facilitate more efficient dispatch of existing assets that are currently transmission constrained in the area. So we have filed, part of the filings that we put in with our regulators specifically here in Wyoming as far as Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity. And that we filed was for up to 860 megawatts. So what I want to try to do is delineate the difference in a few of these numbers. So what we've done is we have acquired development rights from existing developers that have projects that we believe are ready to go. And we now have the right to develop those projects as our own self-developed projects. Well, the way we do resources is we do a competitive RFP and we put that out to the market. And we issued the RFP for all of the new wind energy on the 27th of September, following regulatory approvals that we require to have from the states of Utah and Oregon based on the statutory requirements that we have in those states. So we were able to get the regulatory approvals, and we were a few days late getting that out to the market from what our original projections were. But we do have that out there, and what you'll see the company do is, because of the development rights that we have acquired, we will be putting in 4 projects as benchmark resources as part of the competitive bid process. So what you can be assured of is any projects selected out of the competitive process that have to beat what we can do with our self-developed projects. That's how we make sure that everything is as competitively bid as possible to get the lowest prices for our customers. So those projects, you might recognize a few of those names. I think somebody had them on their slide earlier today. And that is the Ecola Flats and the TB Flats 1 and 2 projects. And then we will also be submitting an expansion of our McFadden Ridge project into the RFP as well. So very active. The developers are all chomping at the bit to get to a bidders conference here at 2 o'clock today. And we'll be going through the details of everything around that RFP. One thing we did have to do based on the pressures that we are now receiving from other states, non-Wyoming states, we did have to open that RFP up to wind projects anywhere in our Pacific Corp system. So, so not just the Wyoming transmission project, but to open the wind RFP up across our system. And that was a requirement of the state of Utah before they would give us the approval to issue the RFP. I want to just put an exclamation point on a few of the things that have been said by others with regards to this is going to happen. Wind energy development is happening across the U.S. It's going to continue to happen. And so we need to make sure that we position Wyoming to be a big beneficiary of that. And an example of the pressure of competition is very real. Because when we went into our regulatory processes in Utah, we are getting tremendous pressure as to why are we proposing to build wind in Wyoming and not solar in Utah. So those competitive pressures are going to continue to be out there, and we need to make sure that we're moving on the time-sensitive opportunities that we have here in Wyoming. So the bidders will need to, for Wyoming projects, will need to be about mid-October, so it's a pretty short order. They're going to be working around the clock, as will we. And then with the wind that's outside of Wyoming that we've had to open the RFP up, they'll have an extra week. And that is primarily because the Wyoming developers have been well aware of our Energy Vision 2020 plans and timing of our RFP. Whereas developers outside of Wyoming, frankly, had no idea that they would even have an opportunity at this stage. So they'll get an extra week to help compete and get their bids in as well. We would expect that we will have a short list of the most economic opportunities on those projects by January. And I think one of the things that folks sometimes don't connect around what is it that ultimately a winning bid has to achieve. And I think one of the things, first and foremost, is it has to be least cost. It's got to be competitive. And when we look at the economics, it's not just the developer's bid. It has to be able to interconnect to the transmission system, and it has to be economic, associated with the costs of it to interconnect to our system, and the cost for us to actually get it to our loads to serve our customers. So it's a much bigger proposition than just the developers' initial cost bids for their projects. So, and because of the time-sensitive nature of the production tax credit, which is bringing significant value to this opportunity, because these projects will be eligible for 100% of that production tax credit value for 10 years. And that is what makes these economics work. So those projects will also need to be able to demonstrate that they qualify for that 100% production tax credit. So tremendous amount of benefit coming to our customers. Obviously, relieving congestion on the existing system enables more efficient dispatch of all of our other resources in Wyoming. Critical voltage on the grid, so reliability benefits there. And then most importantly, the value that the new wind will bring because it is a low-cost resource and it is a zero-fuel dispatch resource, so the long-term value is large. We're currently estimating the value over the life of the projects is a net benefit to customers to the magnitude of about $137 million. So, talked about the RFP that's out there, so we'll just keep moving off of that slide there. You know, a lot of conversation today about permitting. And transmission, I would tell you, is a tough thing to get. And we have spent 10 to 15 years permitting our Gateway West and our Gateway South transmission program. And the fact that we now have those permits at the federal levels becomes an enabler. But we still have a lot of significant permitting to go through. We've got to get through the CPCN process, conditional use permits, the industrial siting permits, and with an expectation that we will be doing most of those in the spring of 18, and that we would award construction for the projects in late 2018 and start of construction in April of 2019. But there's also the environmental stewardship, which is extremely important to us as a company. Environmental respect and stewardship is a core principle and value of our company. And I want to point to, rather than go through a whole lot of detail, but I want to point to another handout that you should have on your tables, which is a really great breakdown of a lot of our wildlife stewardship with our wind facilities. We have a tremendous program, and Travis Brown is here from our wind environmental group, and he oversees and manages all this. We're very proud of our stewardship, and there are many, many components that make that what it is today. And we believe that our stewardship of our wind projects is leading the nation with our programs. And so it is important to us. We will be looking at all bids and projects with the eye of scrutiny as to how are the environmental impacts, how have they been assessed, how have they been mitigated, and is it really feasible for them to be able to fit into our stewardship program, because we hold that as a very, very top priority for us. With that, I'm going to go ahead and open it up for questions. I think we still have a few minutes. We can take questions. So folks have questions, I'm more than willing to field them. Oh, he's the guy with the mic. No questions? Yes?
What are your plans for the Foot Creek project area?
Foot Creek is currently being, and Travis may want to jump in here, we are currently assessing whether or not we can make economic sense out of a repower at Foot Creek. So far, we're still working on it. There's all kinds of criteria that you have to meet to be able to get the safe harbor for the production tax credit going forward. So we haven't given up on Foot Creek, but we haven't got it over the threshold yet.
Cindy, how do your plans fit in with Secretary of Energy Perry's thoughts about the stabilized and secure power grid across the country, where he's concerned that coal companies and nuclear plants are going offline, and renewable energy may not be able to be as stable as a resource for the nation?
I would answer that from a standpoint of, because we are the end serving entity to the customer, we have a reliability obligation. And so we look at that very carefully before we add an intermittent resource into the portfolio to make sure that we can still meet all of our reliability. The other things that we have done across our fleets is, with the energy imbalance market, we have seen new market dynamics that are bringing opportunities for lowering our customers' rates. And that's through the energy imbalance market and capturing that overgeneration that is in California and is causing power markets to go negative. We have been making some operational changements and fine-tuning across our coal fleet to be able to go to lower minimums than we ever thought possible, to increase our ramp rates down and up. And putting operational tools from a technology standpoint literally at our control operators in the coal plants, so that they can see what the market's doing. They can see that market start to go down, and they can exercise their ramp rates, because that's how they're capturing value for our customers. And then they can see it come back up, and they can start to ramp back up. So we have to balance the reliability of the system. So we look at it very closely before we move forward on anything. You see the gentleman right back here in the suit jacket?
Ms. Crane, I was curious. I haven't heard anyone so far refer to PURPA. And under that federal statute, if I'm not mistaken, Rocky Mountain Power is required to purchase renewable energy generated by facilities that are 80 megawatts or smaller. And this has been a big issue, I think, in a number of your states. I'm curious as to how you are planning. I'm assuming there will be a significant number of these so-called QF applications, and I'm curious as to how you plan to respond to those, and particularly how to ensure that the terms on which you may have to make those purchases are fully competitive with the best terms you could get otherwise.
Yeah, so under PURPA, if a project meets the requirement, it's called a qualifying facility project. And if they qualify, they come to the utility, and the regulatory commissions set the pricing structure on what the pricing is that the utility will offer. If the project accepts the pricing, and then the utility is required to enter into a power purchase agreement to take the power. So that's what PURPA facilitates. We will continue to comply with all of our PURPA requirements across all of our states and at the federal level. And we will also make sure that it's a level playing field, and that we're meeting those obligations. So what we hope is that some of the projects that might look like a qualifying facility project today, but haven't been able to come onto the system, we hope and we invite them to please participate in our RFP process. We believe that is an opportunity that those projects now have available to them that under the QF docket wasn't available to them.
Ms. Crane, Lawrence Willie with University of Wyoming. So I teach a wind course here, and I had some years in large wind. And I just thought I'd take this opportunity. I'm going to run off an event to go teach these guys and come back. But we got a chance to go see their High Plains site a few weeks ago. The students were very excited to be able to get that. I wanted to thank you, first of all, for what you just explained to us. I think that decongestion is really important, obviously, to not only your plants, but for others in the state that are trying to build wind farms. And then I learned something very interesting from Gary McCarty and Lane and Anderson, and that is that the antelope actually now have a place to get in the shade. When you want to look for the antelope, they explain to everybody how you just look for the shadows, and you'll see them during the hot summer days bedding down in the shade of the turbine. So I couldn't think of a more tranquil thing myself.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Over here.
First, a compliment, appreciation. Over 20 years ago, my wife and I moved here, and since that time, our electricity bill has not increased significantly, whereas all my other monthly bills have doubled or tripled in that time. However, a year ago, we were offered an opportunity to switch over to Arcadia Power. Can you tell me the relationship between Rocky Mountain Power and Arcadia?
There is no direct relationship.
Okay, because the reason we switched is they guarantee 100% wind power generation.
We do have customer offerings for renewable options for our customers. If, whether it's our Blue Sky program or if a customer wants to work with us individually on meeting renewable or sustainability goals, we are partnering with our customers on those things. And I'm hoping that not only did the rates not go up, I'm hoping that you all did realize that we actually lowered rates 2 years in a row here in the state of Wyoming. And we also made a public pledge and commitment not to raise rates any earlier than 2020. And obviously we are committed to try to avoid that as well, based on looking at efficiencies that we can gain across our business.
Yeah, I'm just curious, so if you're going to upgrade and you're going to have bigger blades, it seems obvious then that you're going to have a higher take on birds. Has there been any research done on how that affects avian impacts?
I'm going to have Travis, do you want to fill that one? They're definitely looking at that, and it's not a direct correlation.
Yeah, so as Cindy pointed out, we are working with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. We run models and look at those things, and we take into account and build those models for eagle take permits. The issue that we have is the projects have been running now for 10 years plus, a lot of them. So you have to look at habituation and avoidance and things like that. So as we work with the service, we'll work through and run those estimates and see what the true impacts may be.
Will they change the model?
They will, yeah, correct. The model is based on the rotor diameter of each turbine.
And one of the programs, and Travis was instrumental in getting this put in place, is our informed curtailment program at our wind facilities, where we have towers, and we, during seasonal migration times, we have people in those towers, and if they see birds en route, they will shut the turbines off.
I applaud
I applaud your efforts to, with your experimental curtailment program for eagles. However, we have a lot of other nesting raptors that occur in the state of Wyoming, some which are species of greatest conservation need. So my question is, are you looking at all raptor species, or are you keeping that just to eagles?
Travis, you want to fill that?
So the target is eagles. That's our intent to curtail for, but it does occur for other raptors as well.
Have you factored in the conversion of LED as to demand for power?
So the question is, have we factored in the conversion to LEDs as part of demand for power? Yes, is the answer. Our integrated resource plan looks at all of the energy efficiency opportunities and enabling technologies beyond LED as well over a 20-year window. And in our long-term resource plan right now, we anticipate meeting 86 to 88% of load growth with energy efficiency over that 20-year horizon. Well, I appreciate the opportunity. We have a team from Rocky Mountain Power here in Pacificorp. They're going to be here through the entire 2 days. And I would encourage you guys to, if you have more questions or you just want to learn more about things that we're doing, please grab them. They will be around the whole time, and you'll have the ability to have conversations throughout the rest of the conference as well. And certainly, if we need more of the handouts, we will make sure that we have those for everybody as well.
One more question regarding wildlife. In addition to raptors, bats are known, especially 3 species, silver-haired, hoary, and eastern red, are shown to be highly impacted by wind turbines. They're attracted, their theories based on insects that collect behind the turbines, and then bats, and they're naturally curious, so they come into a turbine, they get killed pretty regularly. Are you looking at, there's some new studies on using ultrasound to deter bats from coming into turbines, or also using a textured paint on on
the blades themselves?
No, the towers.
The towers.
Are you looking into anything like that to mitigate bat strikes?
Yeah, I guess I could probably get. Yes, we are through one of our sister organizations. We're part of that.
Sorry.
Appreciate it. Through, not only through us, but through our sister organization, they are looking at those types of things. We're involved with AWWI, I believe, Tigger Allison's back here, and looking at different technologies like that. Some may be sound, there could be some painting or different technologies, but yes, we are looking at those things.
I bet we hear about textured paint tomorrow from Amanda Hale, and there are other wind wildlife talks happening tomorrow. Thanks for the interest in that. But thank you, Cindy, very much for the talk.
Thank you all very much.